Welcome to MojoPlays. Today, we're looking at the most powerful Final Fantasy weapons.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Did we leave any out? Let us know in the comments. Muramasa and Masamune. Various. There are two incredibly powerful swords that will always be intrinsically linked together within the Final Fantasy franchise. We're talking about the Masamune and Muramasa. Both make appearances in multiple games and are designed to be utilized by characters who specialize in the martial arts. The Muramasa katana in particular possesses an incredibly high attack power, and depending on which Final Fantasy game you're playing, a number of stat boosting bonuses as well. There's a reason why certain weapons appear again and again in the Final Fantasy universe, and both of these swords remain near and dear to our hearts, like an old friend. Lightbringer and Deathbringer. Various. We'll be going with another matched pair for our next entry, but with a slight difference. Lightbringer and Deathbringer aren't so much similar as they are two sides of the same coin. This isn't thanks to their element infusion, with the former being a holy weapon and an ultimate weapon for Cecil in Final Fantasy IV. Conversely, Deathbringer is a dark weapon and possesses an instant kill feature. Both can come in mighty handy in a fight, although we admit that the aspect of chance associated with Deathbringer makes us prefer bringing Lightbringer into battle, especially if we're facing off against an army of the undead. Ultima weapon, also known as Atma weapon. Various. There are a number of powerful weapons that fall under the term of Ultima, including one specific later on in our list. Final Fantasy VII featured the Ultima weapon as the most powerful item for Cloud, obtained after defeating the super boss of the same name. Here, the weapon's damage rate is dependent on the character's level and HP, making it a bit of a wild card. Meanwhile, Zidane's ultimate weapon in Final Fantasy IX offers bonuses like the Flee command and the potential to induce sleep on its enemies. Lionheart, Final Fantasy VIII. Alright, hands up. Who digs the gunblade design in Final Fantasy VIII? We do, but then again, we were never sticklers for proper physics when it comes to the Final Fantasy universe. The Lionheart is the most powerful gunblade available for this entry's protagonist, Squall Lionheart, and requires some adventuring in order to access all of the materials to craft it early on in the game. Those who succeed in doing this, however, will be rewarded with a weapon that works gangbusters during Squall's Renzokuken limit break. How well, you may ask? Well, how does going up to 9,999 points of damage per hit sound? For multiple hits. The Lionheart definitely gets the job done. Holy Lance. Various. The Holy Lance has appeared throughout multiple Final Fantasy games, but fans of a certain age will likely be nostalgic for one very specific iteration of the weapon. We're talking about Kain Highwind's Holy Lance from Final Fantasy IV, a throwback weapon with devastating power. Although some of Final Fantasy IV spin-offs like Advance and Collection have Abel's Lance set to a slightly higher attack power, the OG Holy Lance deals huge damage, is accurate, and boasts holy infusion, giving Kain a huge edge when he's in the party. Death Penalty, Final Fantasy VII. Guns aren't always a huge part of the Final Fantasy universe, but when they do show up, we're always hoping they'll be as strong as Death Penalty. Other guns called Death Penalty have appeared over the years, but we're particularly partial to Vincent's ultimate version in Final Fantasy VII. This gun is bloodthirsty, and actually gets stronger as Vincent defeats more enemies. In this respect, we wonder if the game's creators were inspired by Stormbringer, an infamous sentient sword from famed fantasy author Michael Moorcock. Either way, if you power up death penalty enough, this beast can basically demolish almost any enemy with a single hit, so start grinding. Nirvana, Final Fantasy X. No Final Fantasy player utilizes the mage classes for their proficiency in melee weaponry or physical strength, but that doesn't mean that we should sleep on the rods and staffs wielded by these magic users. Nirvana offers blatant proof of this, and soups up Yuna to ultimate strength when this staff is obtained within the Calm Lands. For starters, the benefit of 1 MP cost reduces the MP cost of all abilities to, you guessed it, 1 MP. Additionally, Nirvana allows the summoned Aeon Valifor to overdrive the damage limit, dealing over 9,999 points. Plus, the staff itself deals more damage when Yuna's HP is near its maximum. Not too bad for a chunk of wood, no? Caladbolg, Final Fantasy X. We mentioned Ultima weapons earlier on in this list, and that we had a particular favorite waiting in the wings. Well, that time has come, with Tidus's ultimate weapon, the Caladbolg. The Caladbolg is actually referred to as Ultima weapon within the Japanese dialogue for Final Fantasy X, but a sword by any other name would still be as badass. Tidus needs to beat a Chocobo trainer to acquire Caladbolg, but once he does, and powers it up, the sword can deal nearly 100,000 points of damage thanks to one of its bonus abilities. Other boons include elevated evasion chances, counterattacks, and an overdriven battle gauge, making Caladbolg one hell of a weapon. Excalibur, Various. Just like King Arthur's fabled sword of old, the Final Fantasy universe possesses its own Excalibur, and it's no laughing matter. This sword of swords appears in nearly every game in the franchise, and is almost always near the top of the pecking order when it comes to damage and bonuses. It serves as one of the strongest swords in most games of the series, but watch out for one very infamous imposter. It's called Excalibur, and is intentionally, and perhaps laughably, one of the weakest weapons in the game. There's nothing like the real thing, however, and we are always stoked to obtain Excalibur in any Final Fantasy game. Ragnarok, Various. It sort of makes sense to name your series' ultimate family of weapons after a series of events from Norse mythology that brings along the end of the entire freaking world. Ragnarok is another one of those supremely powerful weapons that's as closely associated with Final Fantasy as Chocobos, although nowhere near as cute. Cecil's ultimate weapon is the Ragnarok Huck, which is referred to as a crystal sword, and it's up there with one of the best choices for Steiner. They always have high hit rates, attack power, and bonuses. When all is said and done, if the weapon you have equipped is a Ragnarok, then you're doing it right.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.